Good to see council member Chris downstairs. Cortez, he was downstairs, all watching. You, I mean, crashing the board, we'd like to wait a minute or two. But
Now let's go.
Yeah.
Good morning. I'm calling this meeting to order of the Salton Sea Authority Board of Directors, July 18th at whatever time it is. I have a new watch, so 10:04. Can we start with the Pledge of Allegiance, John? If you would
Yes,
please.
Ready, again.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And then I will ask Lisa to call the roll.
Good morning. President Dockstader,
Present.
Vice President Estrada, Secretary Gutierrez, Director Tortes,
Here.
Director Aguilar,
Here.
Director Cardenas,
good morning, President.
Director Perez, ex officio Samantha Arthur. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. I appreciate that. At this time, I would like to invite public comment. This public comment time is reserved for comments on matters that are not action items and that are not on the agenda. You are invited to speak to any specific action item listed in the agenda at the time it is called. All other agenda items should be addressed at this time. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the authority's jurisdiction. Those present in the room who wish to speak, please fill out a request to speak form and give it to the board secretary. To acknowledge via Zoom, use Zoom's raised hand feature or by phone, press *9 to be acknowledged. Say your name for the record and please address the chairwoman. Remarks will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. California law prohibits members of the board from taking action on matters not on the agenda. Are there public comments at this time? Seeing none in the room because it's probably too hot outside. Are there comments online?
Not at this time.
Ooh, we're gonna have a fast meeting today. Now, at this time, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to board member comments. This is the time set aside for the members of the board to share their thoughts and concerns regarding general authority matters not on the agenda. Ask questions of staff and request that items be added to a future agenda. The Brown Act expressly prohibits lengthy board member discussion of matters not on the agenda, and the board may, at its discretion, by a 4/5 vote, add items deemed to be an emergency to the agenda to engage in public discourse. Are there any board member comments? I do have a comment, but I'm going to wait until we're done. Are there any comments online, Lisa?
Not at this time.
With the board's indulgence, I'll be fast. Huh? Oh, no, I skipped the roll call.
We did.
No, we did.
We did.
Yeah, we did.
We did.
Yeah, we took roll.
I was working.
That's okay.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I would like to address some comments that I have read on social media. This is my personal comment, does not represent the board at all. And this is to the Sultan of Slojamistan regarding the change of the name of the Salton Sea to the Salton Sea. Please recognize that the SSA board does not have the jurisdiction or the authority to comply with this request.
Wow.
But as a good neighbor, I do want the Sultan to know that as members of the SSA, we're hearing your concerns. I personally recognize you're a republic and am inviting you to attend any of our meetings. We look forward to collaborating with you. Incidentally, my son is a citizen of your country. He has dual citizenship. He's a citizen of the United States and Slojamistan. And I personally agree with your banning of crops. And for those that have no idea what I'm talking about, you can Google Slojamistan. Again, thank you to this board for your indulgence and never underestimate the power of social media. Before we move on to the agenda, can we add F on our revised agenda? Consider appointments to ad hoc committees for fiscal year 2024 to 2025. That wasn't originally in the agenda. Can I have a motion
Madam
to?
President, before you act on that motion,
Okay.
can I also suggest that item item B on the agenda be deferred until such time as Director Santillanes arrives?
Yes. Okay. So can we put that all together?
Sure.
Make that a motion to move B, and she is on her way?
I'm told she's on her way.
But she had an emergency.
Is she not gonna make it? She will not, then there's no need to delay.
So maybe let's pull it though, because I would like to do this when she's here in person.
Fair enough.
Okay,
So
so,
Madam Chair, just for clarity, I can maybe help you with the motion. So
Yeah.
well, for consideration is that we move letter B to a future date and that we add which item, Madam Chair?
F, consider appointments to ad hoc committees.
Add that as an standalone action item or add it as an action item?
Added as an action item.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and make a motion that we table item B and that we add F as an action item.
Do I have a second?
Madam President, I will second that motion.
Director Aguilar. Do any discussion? Any public discussion? Any director discussion? Nothing online?
This time.
Okay. Since I have a motion by Director Cardenas, seconded by Director Aguilar. Can we please have a roll call vote? We have to,
President Dockstader,
yes.
Vice President Estrada. Director Tortes,
Yes.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Cardenas,
Yes.
Director Perez. Motion pass.
Thank you. Moving on to consent calendar. To approve, receive and file the minutes of the Salton Sea Board meeting. Also to recognize the warrant register and the internal financial report for May 31st. Are there any director comments or discussion?
None online.
Okay, any public comment? Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So move, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will go ahead and second. So the motion to approve the consent calendar is approved or is made by Director Cardenas, seconded by myself. We need to take a roll call vote.
President Dockstader,
Yes,
Director Tortes.
Yes.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Cardenas,
Yes.
motion passed.
thank you. Moving on, since we are skipping section B, C, document retention policy, review and approve updated policy for retaining agency documents.
Madam President, members of the board, as the board is aware, the Salton Sea Authority recently relocated offices from which we were resident for the past 6 years. As a result of that process, we discovered that we have documents going back to the beginning of time. The board had an approved document retention policy, which was drafted in 2000. I worked with council to revise that in 2021, but the board has never formally adopted a document retention policy. We've got volumes and volumes of decades old material that's just collateral and no longer useful that we want to destroy, but wanted to make sure that our document retention policy was approved by the board and in place before we took that action. So I request your approval of the document retention policy as presented. Happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? I think the only question I had was when I was going through here and I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of documents. We're doing the legal retention, the minimum legal retention period,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay, which is, I assumed.
And it is somewhat of an omnibus document. Some of it doesn't even apply in the present day. We just work with a more of a templated document to create this, just so that it's useful on a going forward basis.
And Patrick, excuse me, Patrick, you did say that legal counsel reviewed this,
It's largely drafted by them.
largely drafted.
It's, like I said, it's somewhat of a template
Okay,
based on the laws and the requirements for public agencies. So
okay, thank you.
informed by our earlier 2000 document.
Well, then I would make a motion to approve the new retention policy.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Director Tortes. I have a motion to approve the document retention policy. The motion is made by Director Aguilar, seconded by Director Tortes. May I have a roll call vote?
President Dockstader,
Yes.
Director Tortes.
Yes.
Director Aguilar.
Yes,
Director Cardenas,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. Moving on, UCR Salton Sea Summit, participation and potential support.
Madam President, members of the board, there's a memo in your packet that describes this request. It's derived largely from the presentations that have been provided to us by UCR in the past, both by Dr. David Lowe and others addressing the continuing concerns about public health and safety at the sea. UCR is putting on a 2-day summit, working together with the Pacific Institute in October. I actually am part of the planning committee for that event. A number of others are as well. This is part of the informing the work that I believe we need to address the concerns about health and safety. I don't think it addresses all of it. This is actually part of what we would be doing, hope to be doing under the state's contract that expired at the end of June. And I'll touch on that a little bit later in my director's comments. But what I'm asking and what I wanted to do is, first of all, I wanted to bring it to the member agencies for their consideration, for their individual support, but also to look to whether or not this board would recommend that we would make some nominal contribution to recognize the important work. So what I'm recommending is that we support it with a $500 contribution. It's not budgeted, but I do have room in other budget areas where we could absorb that small investment. And I believe that it's an important work, and I think that our participation in it is equally as important. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? One thing that I thought was interesting when I read through it is that it's free. I'm very surprised that that anybody attending the conference doesn't have to pay. Just throwing that 2 cents out there, even if it was $10 free food or something.
So that is the challenge. One of the biggest expenses for the event is they're also hoping to provide food. And some agencies don't have the ability to support that cost too.
Right.
So they can do as much as they can with the resources they have available. So what makes it free is organizations like IID helping, which IID has helped in this.
Yeah, and we are still currently, we're in discussions regarding a contribution at this time.
Okay.
So, any more discussion? $500, what do you feel? Pleasure of the board.
yeah, Madam President, I think that's great. I just was curious about so is there an opportunity for local residents to participate either by Zoom or?
It's targeted towards the full spectrum of participants. And that's going to be the challenge with crafting the event, is making it not so hyper technical that people's eyes glaze over when the presentation is going on. It's a 2-day event, and the first day is actually going to be the presentation from the university, but they are sensitive to where people might be at in their concerns. The second day is really focused on a more community-centric approach to what was addressed in the first day. How do we more localize that? But it's going to involve posters and other things. It's really targeted at the local level, UCR has been involved at the Salton Sea and evaluating these issues for a long time. Frankly, candidly, one of the things that I personally have wrestled with over time is working with the universities, and their research tended not to focus on answering the questions that we needed. And so that's why I have diligently tried to involve myself in their effort to make sure that they're answering questions that we need in order to inform the public broadly about the concerns that they have regarding health and safety. And I think that this summit will further that discussion to make sure that that's taking place, and it's not just a science experiment.
Is there further discussion?
Just very quickly, Supervisor Perez, I just was able to log on. Patrick, I got the end of that conversation regarding UC Riverside and the Salton Sea, and you said a list of questions that are still out there pending. Can you give us examples of what you mean by that?
Oh, I think that the work that Dr. Lowe has been addressing regarding biological toxins, the work regarding asthma, other areas of concern that have not been fully and finally established as correlative to changes taking place at the sea or other contributing factors, are work that they're pursuing. I think that that's what this summit will look to address and inform people on, is those areas of concern from a health and safety perspective that we don't know the answers to, but UCR feels they've made significant progress in understanding what those risks are. And they're just continuing to advance it. They do it through this is a continuing process. This is also being done with the Pacific Institute. The work that UCR is working on is actually being funded to some extent by the Bureau right now. So again, it's all part of that conversation. I hope that's helpful.
It's helpful. Now I'm wondering, just because of the fact that sometimes PhDs and data can be interpreted in so many different ways, depending on who you're talking to. I'm wondering if it's possible as well to have AQMD and as well Imperial County, their air district, engaged in this discussion. Just because I understand that Imperial County did do a study some time ago and AQMD is considering it. I'd like to see how we bring these forces together, what they come up with, and to see where the truth lies between all these PhDs, because it gets a little difficult. And so I think that would be very, very helpful to try to figure out, having all these entities at the table and hearing them all out, what does it actually all mean? Just want to put that out there as well.
I suspect they'll all be invited and will actively participate in the discussion at that summit. I also believe this is something we've been talking about for many months here at the authority, about how we address that. And I believe that there's an important role for us to play based on direction such as yours, and bringing all these voices together to make sure that we're getting the right answers and not just scaring people with bad data or incomplete fact sets.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Is there further discussion?
I noticed there might have been a member of the public who raised their hand.
Oh,
Is there a hand raised?
is there a hand raised?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Okay, then there's no further discussion. I'm gonna go ahead and ask for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Director Torches.
I'll go ahead and second that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you. At this time, it has been motioned by Director Torres, seconded by Director Cardenas, to approve the UCR Salton Sea Summit participation and potential support of $500. Can we have a roll call vote?
President Dockstader,
Yes?
Vice President Estrada,
Yes.
Director Pancarte,
Yes.
Director Tortes.
Yes.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Cardenas.
Yes.
Director Perez,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. Moving on, project updates, North Lake Demonstration Project.
Uh, Just a few quick notes, Madam President and members of the board. On Desert Shores, we did receive this work this week, a scope of work for geotechnical studies that are needed to complete the CEQA analysis of that project. That information has been forwarded to Mr. Brooks of the Bureau. Right now, under our current grant agreement, we have largely exhausted the funds available for design purposes. And what we're looking to do is to reclassify some of the existing funds to allow for that important work to be conducted. We will be meeting tomorrow with Mr. Brooks, with Supervisor Kelly and GAFCON to finalize and formalize that scope of work. It may require the issuance of an RFP, but whatever it takes to get that issued and started and completed is something that everybody involved is committed to implementing. On the North Lake Pilot Demonstration Project, there's a technical meeting scheduled based on the geotechnical work that was performed by Dudek and their contractors. There's a technical meeting scheduled for the week of August the 12th in Sacramento, where we will be meeting, representatives from the county will be meeting with the DWR team to look at our current budget, look at the current technical challenges for that project, look at other funding resources that might be out there, and look at how we might revisit the scope and scale of that project to implement a first phase that meets the needs of the local community in a timely fashion. There's also a need to address the pending expiration of that grant. That grant expires at the end of December, and so it will need to be extended. On the Bombay Beach project, I don't have any information other than I understand that Mr. Frank Ruiz is no longer with Audubon. And so I do know that there is some effort by Congressman Ruiz to find funding for that project. So I do think it's still moving forward. I think that the state is taking a more significant role in the implementation of that project. But that's the limited information I have on that. I'm hopeful. I believe Mr. Ruiz is now working with Congressman Ruiz's office, and hopefully he can join us on a regular basis at our meetings. So it's an open invitation.
Congratulations.
Happy to answer any question.
Congratulations to Frank. Does anybody have any questions, any discussion?
Madam President, I do have some questions.
Sure.
As it relates to the meeting that is being scheduled in Sacramento for the North Lake project, I have been part of what's called the North Lake Project Demonstration Project Working Group, which I think is the technical group that has been meeting for quite some time to try to move this project along. I know that at the very beginning, I incorporated some CVWD staff into this. I think CVWD was crucial to understanding the hydrology, the water balance. I think we are proposing also perhaps rerouting some of the drainage to try to come up with the volumes of water that that would be required in order to properly size the lake. And so I'm just wondering why we hadn't heard of this sooner. It's the first time I'm hearing about it. I'd like to be able to join if possible, and I would hope that your comments were more so an invitation to some of the directors who might be interested in joining this meeting in Sacramento. So I think the question is this an invitation? Is this an FYI? What was the purpose of your comments about this meeting happening?
I first of all, I wanted the board to be aware of the status of the work. I don't think it was a specific intention to exclude anybody from participation, and certainly because of the importance of CVWD's nexus to this project, to the extent that you or someone from CVWD would participate in that, I would personally view that as a positive and could pass that along to the team. And provide information about the schedule for the event.
Yeah, I think, and I'll just add one more thing. We've been working on this project for quite some time, and Supervisor Perez remembers, and so does Horacio, that we made some trips to Sacramento back in 2019 to try to free up the money that was eventually the money that we were able to put into that grant for purposes of kicking off the project. And I know that we've had subsequent meetings with Secretary Crowfoot to let folks know that the 20 million that we secured back then isn't enough to build the project that we contemplated back then. I think costs have increased. I know that in occasion we've said, hey, we might need another $20 million just to keep the original proposed size of the lake. Otherwise, if 20 million is all we had, probably the project would need to significantly be reduced. And so I know that those conversations are happening with folks that include the Salton Sea Authority. They might be happening with CVWD directors, perhaps other board members of the Salton Sea Authority. And so to the extent that those are the types of conversations that are being had in Sacramento, related specifically to the North Lake project and that grant agreement, that I think the Salton Sea Authority is the recipient of those dollars. I think it's important that that we have some representation in those conversations. And so I would hope that some of us here are planning to attend those types of meetings, because those are conversations that are going to continue to linger on, I think, until this project is complete, which, might be another 2 years. And so I think certainly the Salton Sea Authority is going to play a role in all of that. And so we got to make sure that we're part of that.
Thank you, Vice President Estrada. We want you to get invited to the meeting. Director Perez, I believe you have your hand up.
I do, thank you. So I think a lot of this conversation that's taking place now goes back to obviously many, but one specific conversation that we just recently had with Wade Crowfoot from the county perspective, if you will, where I had a series of questions around what does the Salton Sea Authority mean moving forward if the conservancy bill moves forward as well. At the end of the day, who's going to report to whom? At the end of the day, how are we going to ensure that the roles and responsibilities are not...
Supervisor Perez, we're having a hard time hearing you. I think you need to get closer. Thank
Can you hear
you.
me now?
Yeah, better.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is the secretary thought that I was actually presently.
It's his microphone.
Hear me now? Is it still bad?
We're still having a hard time hearing you, Director Perez.
How about now?
The volume's very low.
How about now?
Same.
Still low.
Now? No? Worse?
It's kind of the same.
Okay. How about now?
Oh, now it's perfect, but now you don't look like the DJ. I was so impressed with those earphones you had on.
Those are my DJ, actually. That's probably why. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is this conversation needs to take place by as many of us as possible. I was pleasantly surprised and felt really good about our conversation with Wade when I began asking these type of questions around what's going to be the difference here. And he himself, although knows a bit about it all, knows that we still need to flesh all that out in case that bill actually passes. But even more importantly is the concern around, well, equally as important, but when we talk about the community around the North Shore area, the Mecca area, the West Shores area, Bombay Beach, the folks that are basically directly impacted by the sea. In this case, obviously in the north end, the North Lake pilot project. At what point in time do we engage them in this conversation regarding what truly at the end of the day is going to be feasible? What truly at the end of the day can we actually accomplish with the minimum resources that we have? And I think it's important because meanwhile, you have organizations like Alianza, who's been doing a lot of good work on the ground, trying to figure out what those recreational opportunities should look like moving forward. And so I think that we don't want to hold information from folks. I think we need to be transparent and provide all the information we know. And being able to bring them along with us as partners in this effort, whether it's good or bad news, they should know. So that part of that conversation as well, moving forward with Wade and others, is to have that conversation because I think it's critical. We got to somehow understand that we can't just continue to operate, not that we are, but we can't operate in a vacuum here. We have to let folks know what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and put you guys on mute now because there's folks around me here.
Thank you for your comments, Director Perez. Do we have any other comments?
Madam President, I have one more comment.
Go ahead.
So this is for Mr. O'Dowd. I guess this is for the rest of the directors here. I am interested in participating if my schedule allows, and so I'd like to try to get some sort of response that that is an option and the details for that. Thank you.
Appreciate that, Vice President Estrada. And can the board then direct?
I can deal with it.
Okay.
I would like to touch on Director Perez's comment briefly, and I appreciate that. We've worked closely with Alianza on the issues, particularly in the North Shore area for some time. And the challenges that we've had in getting access to the site to get the geotechnical data to make the decisions where we're at today. But regardless, the bond funding under Prop 68 has significant limitations insofar as they address the community specific needs in that area and those around the sea. So what we've been doing and what we will continue to do is cast a broader net to find work. We've worked with the Bureau on finding other funding sources, but we're also casting a broader net now. We actually put in an application for a grant with the American Express Golf Tournament together jointly with the Desert Recreation District. It's not a large grant, But I think it would be seed capital that would be more community-centric effort in the North Shore area if we were successful in getting it. And if we are successful in getting it, it would be our expectation that we would bring groups like Alianza alongside to advance well, we won't be getting it. We'll be informed that we're a finalist to submit a final proposal for the grant. But if we are successful in that process, we would expect to involve Desert Recreation District, Alianza, our state partners, our federal partners, and others as to how that money might best be used at the community level to address those needs, because those needs exist all around the sea. I think every member of this board hears it from their constituents, the concerns about the health and status of the communities around the sea. And I think that we just need to redouble our efforts and be diligent about addressing those concerns.
Before we move on, is there one more comment?
Ron Spears.
Ronald Spears, I believe, has raised his hand. Would you like to go ahead and speak?
Yes, I would.
Go ahead.
Okay, good morning, board members, and Assistant Secretary Samantha Arthur, I see you're there. I'm Ron Spears, Board of Director of the Bahia Del Mar Property Owners Association and Chairman of the Oversight Committee. And I want to get a little more clarification where Executive Director O'Dowd talked about the exhaustion of funds for the Desert Shores project. Could he please clarify what he was referring to in relation to the geotechnical analysis, soil analysis?
I'd be happy to do that, Ron, and thanks for the question. The original grant had budgeted line items, and as you know, we had some hope and expectation that we were going to be able to use some of the existing data from the old wells from CDWD to better understand the hydrology and geology in that area. And as we got into it, we learned that was inadequate. So we have to broaden the scope of that work within the framework of that RFP. And so we need to get the funds to do that. And I think that it's part and parcel of a broader effort to seek more funds generally to ensure that a successful project is implemented in the community. And we've had that discussion. But again, thanks for the question.
Are you saying that there's not enough funds in the original grant to do that geotechnical study?
No, there's enough funds in the original grant. It's just in the wrong basket. It's in the wrong cost category. We just need to move it from one cost category to another so that we can access it. And that request has been submitted to the Bureau, and we're having a meeting with Supervisor Kelly and the Bureau tomorrow to evaluate the RFPs and get that on the street so that we can get that underway. As you know, that's long in coming.
And one follow-up question, there's been a rumor circulated that the final analysis by GAFCON is going to result in somewhere of a request of a $10 million funding for the Desert Shores project. Can you verify what is going on in that discussion?
I am not aware of a final analysis, but I do know that part of GAFCON's effort was to consider the full spectrum of costs that might be associated with the project based on certain conditions that we don't know about at this time. So I think that the concern would be in the worst of worst conditions, it could be more expensive. In the best of best conditions, it would be less expensive. But it emphasizes the criticality of getting this geotechnical work done so that we can better understand that and move this project forward, whatever those costs happen to be. Right now, we're only speculating we have to get concrete scientific data that we can advance the design and development of this project, and that's where we're at right now. I hope that helps.
No, it still doesn't. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm trying to determine the difference between the original 1.25 million that was dedicated to the project with all these additional funding considerations that GAFCON is going to be considering that might result in a $10 million project that's going to result many more additional grants. And I don't, which would inevitably almost permanently delay this project to past my lifetime, I'm sure. And I don't understand why we're seeking an exorbitant amount of grants to create, to do a project that doesn't require that type of money.
So I know that part of the conversation with GAFCON is to get together again with the community, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, to go over where we're at and where we're moving forward with this project and address those concerns and how we intend to address those concerns. And I think that would be the most helpful venue to really drill down into these specifics. And by then I should have the information that you're looking for. But right now I just don't.
Okay, could the oversight committee have a report, a preliminary report, or a completed report before the outreach to the community so that we can review it and then be sufficiently knowledgeable to discuss the additional expenses that are being considered?
I will broach that with Supervisor Kelly tomorrow. I think that sounds like a reasonable approach, Ron, and we will figure out the best way to advance this information to the Oversight Committee and to the community.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your participation, Ron.
Mhm.
Are there any further discussions before we move on? Thank you. Moving on to F, to consider the appointments to the ad hoc committees for fiscal year 2024 to 2025. I'm sure you've all had a chance to read, be appointed. You can't wait. You're excited. Patrick, do you have anything you want to say?
I think that the committee membership largely reflects where it was last year. A few things moved around. Supervisor Kelly has been
the provider details. So whenever you signed up,
I think someone is unmuted.
or whatever.
Thank you.
Supervisor Kelly has for some years now chaired the projects committee, but now as treasurer, he chairs the finance committee. And so a new chair has been assigned to the projects committee, but largely they remain intact and reflective of member participation and interests as they've been expressed over time.
Is there any discussion?
I think Supervisor Perez has his hand raised.
Director Perez.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, just want to make sure. If it's possible, I went through and reviewed this information. It looks great, but I was hoping that if possible, I could also be a member of the executive committee for purposes of the legislative platforms, as well as the programs and projects, knowing that, I will be coordinating efforts with interagencies, as well as knowing the policy process up in Sacramento, and finally discussing programs here locally. I just thought potentially it would make sense. But if there's a will not support that, that's okay too. I just put myself
Supervisor
out
Perez, if I could comment briefly. We do not have a legislative committee at this time. President Dockstader and I haven't had a chance to have this conversation, but I think it is something that is worth exploring, that we have a separate committee of the board that meets on a regular basis to discuss those issues, to make recommendations up to the executive committee and then to the full board. So the executive committee prescriptively is the president and vice president of the board. So I guess the board could change that and add new members, but the executive committee really is overarching over all of the other committees and deals more with things that are consistent with the board policies and approvals, but need to be dealt with on an immediate basis. But I appreciate your comments. I think that they're spot on particularly in the area of legislative oversight. And so that's something that I think this board can focus on and address in a constructive fashion.
That's fine, Patrick, but what I'm referring to is the memo that went out, in which in this memo, it says executive, and the 4 responsibilities includes, one of the 4 is review legislative proposals, federal, state platforms, as well as review new programs and projects. So I'm basing my points on what's in this memo that you wrote. So unless this memo is incorrect, then maybe it needs to be rewritten so that it is correct.
I think
And I'm not
it's
asking for a whole new legislative committee. I don't think we need one. I think the executive committee should do that as well.
Can't do that for you. You would have to make the call.
I don't know that there has, other than Brown Act issues and concerns, I don't know that there has ever been an issue with including board members in discussions of issues of relevant concern at their specific request. I don't know that seating members of the committee one way or the other would preclude or exclude involvement in the discussion that needs to take place on those issues. And I think the project committee would probably be another example of that. If there's a project that's outside the 4 corners of the participants of that committee that another board member might want to provide input and contribution to, I don't see that as being exclusionary. I think that would certainly be appropriate. And I think as I mentioned, I think your point is well taken. It's just that from an historical precedent, the executive committee has simply been the president and vice president and dealt with things at the executive level. And I think that the board can dispense with this issue you raise in whatever manner it sees fit, either by expanding the executive committee or creating other vehicles to meet those express needs.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it should, because the way it's written right here, right now, is not reflective of what you're saying. And I think it's important that we all know what our roles and responsibilities are going to be in these committees moving forward. So
I appreciate that. The memo, frankly, hasn't changed in quite a number of years as far as the description. So if the description needs to be changed, perhaps that's another option. If that should be excluded from that or addressed in some other way, I think that's a fair comment.
Director Aguilar, you look like you wanted to say something.
I just wanted to, just to mention that if there's, I mean, Patrick, you prepare the agendas for the executive committee meeting, I'm assuming. I mean, if there's a bump in taking any kind of formal action, perhaps there's just, when there's a legislative item that's going to be on the agenda of the executive committee, maybe you could notify the supervisor and he could participate on a more informal basis. But just to assure that he can participate and provide input to the discussion because of the obvious interconnection with his other interagency discussions.
I have heard that loud and clear, and I'm hopeful that through my interactions with this board, there's very little that I do without the board's full understanding and clarity of the actions that we're taking. But specific as it relates to legislative matters, Director Perez, we absolutely will involve you in all manners as they arise.
Madam President, I had a question, comment.
Go ahead, Vice President Estrada.
So I just wanted to maybe clarify or I think this is still happening, but don't we get a legislative update at every meeting? That's something that's still happening, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that it seems to me that by almost direction of the entire board, we engage in what our legislative positions ought to be as we get these updates both from the federal level and the state level. I think we get tuned in as to what's happening, what are some of potential options. So I think you're right, Patrick. I think that as we get those updates and reports, if there is any particular legislation that might be of interest specifically to any of the directors, for whatever reason, I think that those could be elevated to ensure that we're putting the proper attention to those things. And so I just make that comment just to I think we're pretty transparent as a board on the directions that we're taking on the kind of on the legislative side of things. And that was it.
Thank you, Vice President Estrada. And if there's not
I
any
guess
other,
what I'm asking for at the end of the day is, let's fix the memo. Write it so that the bullet points that are in it are what those committees are doing. That's it.
so is there further discussion? Do we want to vote on it? Do we want to fix it, vote on it at our next meeting, which will be 2 months from now? Another point I would like to make, and I'm in full support of Director Perez having input. However, when the executive board meets, as we all are extremely busy, to get one more person schedule to meet it does definitely take some time. So I just want to throw that out as well.
If I could comment, Madam President, that the concerns that have been expressed, the executive committee doesn't have authority to act except as directed by the full board. So when it says review legislative proposals, it's doing just that. If it's consistent with board policy, then then we can proceed. They would be reviewing it with me and others, our support team, to make sure that it's consistent with the board, the positions that the board has taken. If it's not, then it would come to the full board for consideration. But notwithstanding that, more voices are better than less voices. So just as Director Estrada mentioned his interest in being more involved in the North Lake project, your interest in being more involved in legislative matters is an extremely positive development to me, and I think to the authority and to the community served by the authority. So I think that's good.
Is there further discussion? Do I have a motion?
So the motion would be in reference to
Depends on the motion you make. To consider the appointments to the ad hoc committee.
as presented.
Depends on the motion that you make as presented, or if you want to amend the motion.
Okay, I'm okay with making the motion to consider the appointments of the ad hoc committee as presented. That's my motion. I just do ask that we do take in consideration both Director Aguilar, Director Perez, and Director Estrada's comments, Mr. Patrick.
I could suggest you could direct staff to review the language and provide clarification going forward.
I'll go ahead and amend my motion to include that language.
Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second as well to consider the appointments to the ad hoc committee with the addition of language revisions. Consideration. At this point, could we have a roll call?
President Dockstader,
Yes.
Vice President Estrada,
Yes.
Director Plancarte,
Blancarte, yes.
Director Cortez,
Yes.
Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Director Cardenas,
Yes.
Director Perez,
Yes.
motion passed.
Could I have a comment
Yes.
on that? So with these ad hoc committees, I just wanted to make sure that we clarify what you said, that moving forward, this is one way to get things done because the Brown Act, right, doesn't apply to the ad hoc committees, right?
Well,
That's right.
they don't require to notices,
Okay.
Right.
All right.
but they do apply with respect to quorum. So
Okay.
if we had a quorum participating in an ad hoc discussion, that would be a Brown Act violation.
All right. So
So
the
that's
notice,
why I'm saying any number of board members could participate in the ad hoc discussion as long as we didn't either directly or through, what's the term? Leapfrogging or whatever it's called, chain, create a quorum of board members. I like leapfrogging better.
okay. All
And
right.
what's our quorum? 4, 5? What is it?
It actually would be 6.
6.
So less than.
Well, we have actually, there's really two different frameworks by which we operate. In our board meeting, if a member agency is represented by one board member only, he or she would count as 2 votes.
Right.
In a public setting, that member is individually represented and does not act on behalf of the agency and acts only with the authority of 1 vote. So we could have as many as 5 people and not be in a violation of the Brown Act.
Thank you for that clarification. Good, good.
Madam President.
Yes, Director.
Thank you. I apologize for being late, have conflicting appointments. Wanted to let you know I'm gonna excuse myself before reports start because I do have another commitment going on at the same time. I will monitor online, and of course, our programs are recorded, so I will go ahead and see the reports there later once they are posted. Thank
for
you.
being here.
Thank you, Director. We appreciate that.
And we'll see you over there in a little while.
Reports. Let's move on to federal. Lisa Moore, I believe you're up.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, directors. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. In DC, we've had 2 pieces of legislation that are relevant to the C that we've been working on. The first one is the Water Resources Development Act, which is the authorization bill for Army Corps of Engineers work. We had actually been working to advance legislation in that bill to enable us to receive additional funding into the feasibility study. We were actually able to get that legislation passed in appropriations for last year. And so in the Word of bill that's now pending, we don't need that legislation that we've been trying to get anymore. On the Senate side, we actually, there is language now in that bill sponsored by Senator Padilla to include the Salton Sea feasibility study among studies that the Corps of Engineers is directed to prioritize and expedite. So that's on the Senate side. The House bill does not have that language, so they'll sort of move forward and we'll be in a conference situation. On the House side, the other area of legislation is appropriations, which we do every year. So that's FY 25 appropriations. The House side for the Corps of Engineers is the Energy and Water Appropriations Bill. And in that legislation, Congressman Ruiz has increased the funding for the Bureau of Reclamation's Salton Sea, what's called the Salton Sea Research Program, which is really just the line item that the Reclamation Department uses for a lot of its Salton Sea work, sort of research, some of the things that Patrick was talking about with respect to I think where they're taking the funding for the UCR work. So right now in the House bill, it goes from $2 million or 2.2 to 4.2 million. Again, that's just on right now. It's the beginning of the appropriations process, which will play out over, it typically plays out over kind of a long period of time, but that's in the House bill. So those are the sort of 2 things happening in DC relevant to the C. So legislation in two of those bills. WRDA was a bigger focus for us when we we're trying to get some of these things fixed so we could increase funding into the Salton Sea feasibility study. But again, we were able to do that in appropriations. That set us up so that we could get the additional money in the work plan, which we did, which is $3.8 million. So we're advancing our agenda just sometimes in a little bit different legislative vehicle than we initially, were trying. What we usually do is, target as many bills as we can to see where we might be able to move legislation. So that's what's been going on here. Does anybody have any questions?
Anybody have any questions? Good job, Lisa. I don't see any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, Jeremy Brooks. I see he's online. U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. Haven't spoken to Jeremy lately.
Yeah, I am here. I don't have an update for this meeting, but I'm here monitoring. I was a little kind of confused by Lisa's statement on the funding in the House bill. So Lisa, was there a new development where the request has been increased from 2 to 4? It's a little.
If you look in the report, you'll see that. So you see the budget, you see FY24 funding, then you'll see the budget request, and then you'll see a plus up.
I think there was a request by Ruiz's office for a community grant for $2 million to support the Bombay Beach project, the eventual construction. I haven't seen that number go up, so that would be great news for the CF if that.
Yes, if you look in the report on the bill. So again, it's just on the House, right? It's just in the House side.
Okay, yeah, it's very early still, so.
Yeah, so it's not in. So it'll show up in the like the chart in the back in the report is where.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that.
Sure.
And I will pass the mic.
Thank you, Jeremy. We appreciate that. Moving on to State, Horacio, State Advocacy Report.
Good morning, directors. It's always great to be with you. This past month, we did have quite a bit of activity with respect to the Salton Sea. I'll start off with the state budget. A final state budget agreement was landed on at the very end of the month that did result in the $65.8 million that were originally proposed by the governor in January for the Salton Sea to be fully shifted to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So those dollars are set and are predictable. As I noted, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund creates revenues by creating a market for buyers and sellers to purchase and sell credits for carbon emissions. Those typically result in well over $1 billion with each auction. So the visibility on those dollars is very certain. We anticipate that we will get them. As part of the budget agreement, however, the governor did agree to place 2 bonds before voters in November, a $10 billion education bond, and with respect to the Salton Sea, a $10 billion bond related to climate resiliency. As part of that bond that was adopted and signed into law, language was included that directed $170 million for the Salton Sea. Of that $170 million, $10 million was set aside for either A, the creation of a Salton Sea Conservancy, or B, the Salton Sea Authority. No other language was added, so it's very much open-ended that those $10 million are available for one of those 2 categories. Now, one thing that I would encourage, actually, let me step back. So one of the things that we are, as the board recalls, last year, Senator Steve Padilla did have legislation that would have created a conservancy. SB 583. The senator made the decision at the very end of the session to put the legislation on inactive, with the goal being that he was going to be engaging the community to elicit additional feedback on what a conservancy should be or what it should look like. That legislation remains on inactive. It is unclear right now if the senator plans to move that legislation forward to the governor. To do so, he would have to move it by the end of August. But that aside, one of the things that I would encourage and kind of put before you is with respect to these $10 million, to the extent that the authority does want to try to acquire all, if not a big chunk of them, one of the things that would behoove us is to develop a spending plan that would outline what the authority would want to do with those dollars. Supervisor Perez, Director Perez mentioned earlier the work that Alianza is doing with respect to the Salton Sea. To the extent that trails were included in this plan, that could be something that we could then pursue if the bond is passed. These dollars would be effectively available for the next budget planning cycle, which would be next year. So that's just something I wanted to put forward. That is the extent of my report. Certainly open to any questions.
Thank you, Horacio. Does anybody have any questions?
I would just say, I think it said either of, not either or.
Yes.
And I think you clarified that in your last comment. And in addition to the trails, I think the North Lake project itself likely
Yes.
will need additional funding too. So I think that that's good guidance and something we should focus on.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
then I see Ron Spears has his hand up, maybe because he needs some funding for his project. Go ahead, Ron.
Hi, thank you, President. My question is in regards to, just noticed that Jeremy Brooks was here at your meeting. And the Oversight Committee has requested an audit, basically, of the expenses that have been distributed from the Bureau of Reclamation Fund for the Desert Shores project. And as of yet, we have been unsuccessful in obtaining that. I was requesting if Mr. Brooks would be able to provide that list of expenses that have already been distributed out of the Bureau of Reclamation grant for the Desert Shores project, so we know how much money is actually left in the fund and where the money has gone so far.
Yeah, just to respond to that, it should be fairly easy for Patrick to make that information available on a summary level for you guys in terms of.
I have requested that from Executive Director O'Dowd.
Patrick, I assume you can take care of that request?
Yes, I appreciate that, Ron. I don't recall seeing that, but that certainly something that is part of every quarterly report that we file. We have detailed information that I could make available to you anytime. So I'll reach out to you this week and we'll figure out what you're looking for.
And just for purposes of this, just for Ron here, just real quickly, the vast majority of the funding is still there and available.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're worried that large sums of money have been spent, that would not be the circumstance.
Okay.
That's right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further comments, let's go ahead and move on. And of course, I lost my place. Where am I at? Am I on Cassandra yet?
Or at State of California.
Oh, Mr. Miguel Hernandez, you're on. You're up.
Engines on high.
Sorry.
Hello, members of the board. Good morning. My name is Miguel Hernandez, Public Affairs Officer with the Salton Sea Management Program. And I have a brief update on a program. Actually, I do have a brief update from our past report from June. This is in regards to the State Water Board meeting. I know it was mentioned very quickly during that meeting, but I just wanted to point out that that workshop did occur May 22nd in Sacramento. The team was out there, provided a very thorough update on the program, particularly on progress made on our projects, the SEH project, vetch enhancement projects, also partner-led projects. There was also a panel that was led, or that included panelists from our partners, such as the Salton Sea Authority, Audubon, IID, where they provided also an update on their work and what they also have on their work at the Salton Sea. So I just wanted to bring that back, that that annual workshop. It's a really good opportunity for our program to share with the public what we've been up to in the previous years. So in fact, in advance of that meeting, we also put together some community meetings where we share pretty much the same information, just in a little bit different of a format. And we intend to keep those moving forward as we keep having those annual meetings with the water board. So Salton Management Program, it's thankful and appreciates all the comments that were received during that meeting and that we continue to receive, not only for the annual report, but also for the community needs report that recently concluded its public comment period. And we're really paying close attention to those notes and trying to incorporate as much as we can into both our projects or processes, or in this case, for the community needs report, for that particular report, to keep incorporating community feedback into those. So just wanted to also point out that from last year's Salton workshop, we received some recommendations regarding our website, that we needed a better or an enhanced website with better organized, that we needed also a platform where we could house project updates. So I'm happy to report that we did achieve that. The program put together what we call the Salton Management Program Project Tracker. I believe I mentioned that on one of our previous meetings. So that was in reaction, or to address that recommendation of having a better organized website, consolidated platform where we have all that information. So that's live. In fact, we're working on updating that already. And we'll do another update before the end of the year for that platform, as well as the website itself. It's better organized. The looks are about still the same, but information, it's up to date. We keep working on enhancing it. And we'll continue to go that way. So folks have better access or easier navigation through the website. So that was a result of last year's Salton workshop that we were able to sort of deliver for this one, as well as the deliverables that we have to meet for Project Acreage. Okay, moving on. So we're getting ready to release the community needs reports. Like I said, we concluded a public comment. After a 60-day public comment, we concluded that, I believe, sometime May. And we've done a review of our public comments that we received. We're working on incorporating those edits into the final documents. We're working on adding a couple appendices, including all the comments that we received. And we're also working on updating the translation. Both English and Spanish drafts were out, but now we're working towards updating that version as well. So we're hoping to have that ready in the coming weeks, and that will be final documents for both the Salton Management Program Community Needs Report, and there is this other report that was commissioned to Better Work Group that talks about community needs, but on a broader spectrum, some of the things that kind of fall outside of the Salton Management Program scope. So those two reports will be finalized in the coming weeks. Then also another deliverable that was actually identified in the community needs report. It's the Salton Management Program engagement plan. There was an engagement plan that was developed back in 2020, and that's identified on this community needs report as an area of opportunity, meaning updating that plan. And what this engagement plan is primarily a set of guidelines or a roadmap on how to better engage with our communities, as far as public interactions, public events, public communications. So we're working on that. In fact, we just met yesterday with a subgroup of the engagement committee. We met on a working meeting to discuss an updated draft. In 4 years, a lot has happened. So we're working on that towards having an updated engagement plan before the end of this year. So like I said, we just met yesterday, kind of working on updating language, but we will continue to go that way to update the plan. We'll eventually meet with the larger engagement committee to go over those edits and updates, and then we'll have a finalized version, as I said, before the end of the year. And hopefully that document also serves to our partner agencies so they can take a look at what the SSMP is currently doing with the advice and support from the engagement committee, as far as recommendations such as having meetings at community-oriented venues like a library or a school, have those meetings during the evening, have translation services and interpretation services available. There's a list of recommendations that are part of that engagement plan that might come in handy for other agencies that are working with the same community. So hopefully, other partners can make good use of that one too. Perhaps helps us enhance it as well. And then to conclude, I just wanted to point out that Salton Management Program continues to have project tours and visits. I know the weather is really hot. We haven't had as many as we had at the beginning of the year, but we do have a couple here and there. And we're starting to revamp or plan to revamp our tours for the fall. Salton Sea Summit's coming. So there might be an opportunity for us to kind of take advantage of the audience that's paying attention to that event to see if they would like to participate at one of our tours. So we're still on the planning stage for that. And we'll continue to share that information publicly. We want to invite folks, particularly community members, to check out our projects. At past community meetings that has been expressed interest for folks to participate. Community that haven't seen the project firsthand. They have seen it in pictures, but they just want to somehow see it and sort of see it to believe it, right? So we're working on that as well to bring those community members that have an interest in looking at our projects. So that concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. When you have this community needs report come out, will you forward a copy to Patrick and he can give a copy to all the board members?
Definitely, yeah.
Appreciate that. And then would you want to come when you come back at our next meeting, because we'll have a month off, maybe we can talk a little bit more about it. You can delve into it a little bit.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yeah,
Thank you. Appreciate that. Moving on, Salton Sea State Recreation Area update, Cassandra Van Dyne. I know she's online. She's ready to.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, good morning. I'm very happy to be here. I just wanted to give a report. We're at the end of our season. So in the past 12 months at the state recreation area, we've seen 19,504 day visitors. And about 9,828 campers. So we've seen a lot of people at the state recreation area, and I just want to highlight we have some very special campers that came out earlier in the summer. We had the Bombay Beach Nature Club, which I've been working with them for a few months, and this was a really amazing experience to see. So we went from a few months prior learning how to set up a tent and work together, to actually having a camp out, building a campfire. We went on a scorpion search to see some of the local residents of the state park. And the whole experience really just increased confidence and comfort in the outdoors. So that was really amazing to have some of the Bombay Beach Nature Club come on out to the state recreation area. Recently, I've also been working with the North Shore Community Center. So we did a nature walk last week. We're able to see some quails and learn how different birds of the Salton Sea utilize their beaks to get the food that they need. Also working with the Mecca Library and other community centers in the area. Also at this time, I'm in a planning stage. So if you know of any organizations or schools or maybe teachers that would be interested in either having a field trip to the state recreation area or having us come out to their school, I'm scheduling all those activities now. So you can pass on my contact information. My email is cassandra.vandyne@parks.ca.gov. And then the last thing I just want to remind everyone to recreate responsibly. What I'm teaching people now is just to look towards the animals. They're doing it right. They're out early in the morning and late at night, and making sure you're staying hydrated out there because it is very warm. But that's all I have. Are there any questions about the state recreation area or any of the visitors we've had recently?
The only question I have for you, Cassandra, is the 19,504 day visitors. Is that year? Is that January till now? Is it like July to January? What's the date? What's the year?
Yeah, it's July to June.
July to June. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
And I had a question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
And I just wanted to hear, did you say a scorpion search or Scorpio
Correct.
search? Scorpion?
Scorpion search, but Scorpio, the constellation, is also up in the sky when the scorpions are out. So scorpions are more active during the summertime, and they fluoresce when you use UV light. So we go out with black light and we're slowly looking for them, and they're bright green. So when you see one, they like glow in the dark essentially. And so We just walked around looking for scorpions.
And then can I just ask, when do you do those expeditions?
So I did that when they came out for a camp out. We don't have any set dates, but if you're interested or you have like a group that you want to bring out, I'd be happy to plan that.
Oh, he does. Don't you worry.
All right.
Stay tuned.
Okay, we will coordinate.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you, Cassandra. We appreciate that.
Can I jump in with a relevant comment?
Oh, yes, Samantha, go ahead.
Okay, great. Cassandra's mention of being in the planning phases made me think about California Natural Resources Agency's Youth Community Access Grant Program. And so I wanted to share that information here. I know that Miguel sent this grant information out to our list of partners in the engagement committee, but want to also share here that this grant program is soliciting proposals from now until August 14th. And they're doing a series of workshops. This is separate from the Salton Sea Management Program, so it's statewide, but it's within our California Natural Resources Agency. And they're seeking projects that support youth access to natural or cultural resources with a focus on low income and disadvantaged communities. So Cassandra's mention of being in the planning phases and looking for organizations that are interested in that access made me think this is relevant. I want to share with you all this opportunity and hope that Riverside County and Imperial County has some proposals or some ideas to put forward.
Thank you, Samantha. We appreciate that information.
Yeah, and I'd just like to share, I did share that with the Bombay Beach Nature Club and then also with my own community. So I'll be on one of those information sessions. So that's such a cool program. Thank you.
You're welcome. Moving on to local reports, if there's no further. Salton Sea Action Committee, was Alan Pace, was he online? Oh, there he is.
Here, I'm here. Yes, we're still active. We've had, I think Juan might have talked about it at a previous meeting, but he was had a tour around the sea a couple of months ago. We're going to get back in action with those at the end of October, and we again will be supporting the Salton Sea Summit with sponsorship and also some participation in making materials, and we're actually working with UCR on both the summit and possibly contributing to some of the science work that they're doing. That's all I've got for now.
Thank you, Mr. Pace. Anybody have any questions? I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the executive director's report.
I do see that's.
Oh, Samantha.
Never mind.
Oh, she put her hand
Thank
down.
you.
Right, that was my old hand.
Just
Apologies.
wanted to- All right. So I did want to mention, I touched on the American Express grant earlier. I did want to mention that Chris Herman from the who's involved with the Salton Sea Action Committee worked with us on laying the groundwork for that grant. So hopefully if that comes together, we've also looked at the information from the state on their grant programs. I don't know that it would fit with what we're trying to do here, but it's just like putting a giant jigsaw puzzle together, right? Finding the baskets of opportunity and putting them in the right place. And thanks again, Ms. Arthur, for sharing that, because I do think that the more people know about it, the more people can participate in it. So I think it's amazing what you learn at the Salton Sea Authority Board meetings about scorpions and, and others. The only other thing I wanted to mention is I mentioned earlier that the contract that we had with the state did expire at the end of June, but that doesn't diminish the importance of work that we do in communicating with our stakeholders and the community more broadly. We did and do participate with the state's outreach program. But when we were on a conversation with Secretary Crowfoot, one thing that I've been discussing here with the board for some months now is a visit that we took at Owens Lake. And I'd like to put together that we change the calendar so that we have every other month to operationalize these types of visits, symposiums, other opportunities to engage with the community and educate and be informed. I'm looking at setting up a number of fact-finding missions over the coming months. I'm hoping it's a bit early, or rather it's a bit late to pull it off, but I'm hoping still that I can put together a trip to the Prado Dam wetlands next month to see if any of my board members might want to participate in that. It's a very interesting project, one that I was able to tour a few years back with Aqua. They actually use the Prado wetlands to clean the water before it goes through the dam and is used in the recharge basin by Orange County Water District. And I think that a lot of what will likely be, a lot of the opportunities that likely will exist at the sea will be these wetlands projects, and they serve a very useful purpose. So I think seeing one, there's also a duck club that operates out there. So it's not the time of year where the ducks are flying through, so you won't see a lot of fireworks going off, but that's part of the economic component to what they do. Other opportunities, well, so in addition to the Prado Dam, I'm hoping, I've reached out to the Great Basin Unified Air Pollution Control District. That's a heck of a name. And I'm trying to see what their availability might be in the early part of October for a trip. That's if I can pull that together. My intention is to set up a fact-finding mission, invite our friends from the state, and invite our congressional and state delegation or their staff to participate in that fact-finding mission. I'm also looking at setting up something in the early part of next year, maybe February, to Salt Lake City. We have some contacts in that space, and there are things that they're doing there that are projects that may be useful in our regard. So those are the kinds of things that I think if we can pull together, it would just enhance our ability to both inform ourselves as to what's going on elsewhere and also bring people into the discussion. Other than that, that's all I have to report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions, Madam Chair, but I do have some final comments when it's appropriate.
Sure. It's appropriate.
All
Go
right.
ahead.
Yeah, I failed to acknowledge in director reports or director comments. IID did Imperial Irrigation District did or initiate its environmental assessment period regarding its 2024-2026 temporary Colorado River System Conservation Program. So we're currently in a comment period in regards to that. That conservation effort is obviously very, very important to unlocking some federal funds as it relates to the Salton Sea. And the sunset period for the comment will be the last Sunday of July. So that was a very important initiative that IID unveiled late August. In addition, we also unveiled a draft program plan for our deficit irrigation proposal regarding some conservation efforts that are going to be made to help the hydrology issue. So that was also done in July. And then the third thing is that we're really close to finalizing our system conservation implementation agreement, which is what we call SKIA. And that is in reference to 2024-2026. So Madam Chair, I am asking that we consider an agenda topic in September to go over those programs. Those are critical programs. They are really related to hydrology and environmental assessment as it relates to the Salton Sea. And I believe there could be some healthy discussions regarding questions or concerns that folks may have. Every time I see Ms. Hamby here, it inspires me to address that from a public health standpoint. But IED is not operating in a vacuum, and we definitely need to discuss that probably in September and afford the public an opportunity to chime in if there's any questions or concerns. So I am asking that be considered for an agenda topic in September.
Fabulous idea. Love it, Alex. I think we should. Anybody else? Director Tortes, did you have did you need to make a comment? I only say that because your mic's on.
No.
All right, just checking.
No comment.
All right. And if I see no other comments online, then at this time, meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.
Thanks.